So, it's going to be kind of a packed presentation. 40 minutes, it's probably not enough. So I'm going to try to kind of narrow it down and highlight specific features that were added in version 10. It's going to be around usability, administration, some changes on the financial management. On the sales and purchasing, there were a lot of different enhancements, small enhancements that make your life easier. As well on project management, there is some a new Gantt chart that is interactive, some changes on the inventory and distribution, production, and extensibility. So I'm not going to go through that list now. I'm just going to go straight to the features. So first of all, the web client, those of you that joined the earlier session already know all about it. So let me just very quickly give you an overview. The web client was introduced in version 10, and now it's available both for SQL and for HANA installation. And the web client is really a web-based client for Business One that was rewritten and recoded, and it sits on top of Business One. So you're still going to have the standard client, and for those that are on the go and that the functionality that is included currently in the web client is good enough, they can use that web client just by logging into a URL and you're in the system. And as you see, it's Fiori based, it's a very modern look and feel, very user intuitive. So I encourage you to look into the option of a hybrid solution where having some of the back office using the standard client, and some of maybe your salespeople will use the web client. In terms of usability, you may notice already that the colors have changed a little bit. We're using now this new skin style, Belize Deep. And if you notice the previous screenshot, they kind of look the same, although this is the standard client and the previous one was the web client. So the idea is really to have like a unified look and feel between the two applications. So it's kind of just kind of better look and feel and modern look and feel. When you're in the client, you can see at the top there the company name and the user that is currently connected. You can very easily click on it and change company and change user. As well, you can show or hide the toolbar. Again, if you kind of want to get rid of this top area, you can hide the toolbar and just focus on the cockpit and on the main menu. Some enhancements to the users and user management. First of all, in the license administration window, you can now hide locked users. You can show user name, which before we only saw the code. Now we can see the name. So that's just helping you kind of find your users that you need. In addition, you can sort and filter by user code or name in that window. So if you do get a long list of users, it's much easier to find. And in an enhancement that was introduced in the latest patch or feature pack 2008 was that if you removed a user code from the system, if you remember, from now on, you cannot use that code anymore. So if I had Joe as a code and I removed it, and now I have a new employee named Joe, so now I can actually add the same user. It's just going to tell me there is an older user that was removed, and do I want to turn it into a dummy value and reuse the new code. And finally, the user, when you remove a user, and if the user that still have a license attached to it, it's going to ask you, do you want to remove both the user and the license? And that's due to an issue that we used to have. If the user was assigned with the license and I removed the user, the license was kind of lost in space, in the space of Business One. So now you have better control over that. Some additional enhancement on document printing. I have additional selection criteria that I can use. And the form settings window, after I open it, I have I have the field that to print, and this allows the user to customize those columns that are displayed. Unrelated feature is, if you guys remember, the reference document feature that was already introduced before, but now we've added it to additional documents like checks for payments, purchase request, goods receipts issue, inventory transfer request, and inventory transfer. And you can actually manually assign or reference other documents to this document. So the idea is not the native linkage between documents, but really adding additional documents or additional reference to other documents. Also, recurring postings can be referenced to a single document. And, you know, this is, if you guys are familiar with this functionality, the option to identify a recurring journal entry. So over there as well, you can go ahead and reference additional documents. And then as you see kind of throughout the versions and the patch levels, we're adding more and more documents that can be referenced. And this helped me when I open the relationship map of the document and I can see any referenced documents to the original document. Of course, I can see it here as well if I just click the browse. We're supporting attachments in additional objects. So you're probably also familiar with that. So now I have the option to add attachments to many more documents. It's just really unifying the system, streamlining the system behavior. We've increased some field lengths. We increased the customer group and vendor group name to 100. The item group name also 100. The item description was increased to 200. And the field, the industry name increased to 40 characters. Okay, so just more space to put in your description for groups, and for item description. Enhancement in approval process. Really, it's just a one new checkbox that was added under the general settings, which enables authorizer to update a document draft in pending status. So, you know, I know there's a lot of checkboxes here, but those were added previously. And the general idea is that now you can allow either the authorizer or the generator to update the draft in any status that it has. Of course, you know, if they need to be, they're going to be kicked off another approval process, but it is controlled by the system, and you can choose if you want to allow that or not. Alert management window has changed a bit, so you kind of get a nice overview of all of the alerts that you currently have. You can see if they're active or not and all of the settings related. And then at the bottom there, I can create a new user alert. I can highlight multiple rows and set them to active, inactive, or remove them. On the authorizations under business partners, I can now set tab level authorization. So I can say, you know, the user cannot open payment terms at all, or it's a read only for that tab. So that kind of makes it more easy and more detailed, I guess, because before you could only do certain fields in the business partners, and now it's by the tab level. So it makes it more detailed, the authorization levels. And if a user doesn't have an authorization to a certain tab, it's going to be automatically hidden when they open the business partner master data. On the financial management, we added the option to drill down to the GL account that is in the financial report. So this is available in the balance sheet, in the trial balance, and P&L report. Posting periods, there's a new checkbox that you have in the posting period that where you can define the default due date to be set. You know how usually when you get to the end of the year and you have invoices that are due next year, so now you can actually say that the next period, the due date will be at the end of January, for example. So it just kind of saves you the hassle of going back and adjusting due dates. Extension of some fields like the journal remarks in a journal entry, as well as reference 3. So the journal remarks is now 254 and reference 3 is now 100. There's also a nice little change that you can decide if you want to only copy manual remarks from one document to another. If you remember when I copy a quote to an order in the remarks, it's going to show based on quote 1, 2, 3. So now I can kind of control it and maybe get rid of it and only copy remarks that that I put in. Okay. Back order report enhancement. So this back order report now also includes reserve invoices in addition to sales orders, if you're familiar with that. There's also a status added to it, fully paid, partially paid, and not paid. And also the reserve invoice status is included in the filtering. So just kind of get a full view of your back order status. You can now print a service call and a contract. So basically before you could just basically do some kind of a screenshot or a print screen, and now you actually have a template behind it, including printing preferences for service contracts, for service calls and service contracts. On the addresses, you know how sometimes the address is kind of not complete, and you may have a building, or you may not have a building, or you may have a county or not. So now in the address format, you can hide empty address lines. So what it will do, it's gonna kind of get rid of those empty lines and show it, you know, as you want it to be in the document level. In addition, since we're talking about addresses, now I can also have access to the user-defined fields in addresses. Before I was actually not able to, I was able to add them, but I wouldn't see them in the document itself. So now I can, if I click on the 3 dots here on the browse, I can see those user-defined fields. You will see a little bit of a change in behavior when you add a document. Remember, it only had the add option. Now you can choose between add and new. So it's going to clear up the window and you're going to add a new document. Add and view. So add and then view the document you just created. And then add and close. So add and I'm finished. It's going to close the window, and whatever you chose last will be saved. And you know, for the next time, if it's always add and new, it's going to stay like that. Or if you always want to view the document you just created, I find it very, very useful. A few more sales and purchasing and service updates. So you're now able to edit user-defined fields in the document rows in documents that are not editable. What does that mean? Usually, like if I added an invoice to the system and I want to go back and edit a user-defined field in the row level, it's blocked because generally invoices rows are blocked. But now I have a setting for that, and I can say that yes, I'm allowed to edit UDFs on the marketing rows. And then this is regarding the UDFs in the header. So now the UDFs can be viewed and updated in the marketing documents, in the business partners, in the service call, and in the address format. So they're really part of your overall address format in the system. There's a new field in marketing documents that you can create QR codes in the print layout. So basically, you're gonna enter whatever the QR code manually, and it's going to generate like a barcode when you print the document. Okay, let's skip that. Copying manual remarks, I mentioned that already, where you can just say, I don't want to copy the system automatically generated remarks, so just copy remarks that I added. Another nice feature is that now I can copy attachments from the base document to the target document. So before it wouldn't do it. So now you can actually set up that the attachment will be copied from one document to another. The item description is exposed in alternative item window. So when you define alternative items, maybe you want to add a description or change the description. So before it would just kind of take the default from the item master. Now you can definitely just update it in the window itself, and it's going to be saved only for alternative items. There's a new document status that says emailed. So you now have multiple statuses. You have opened and emailed. You have opened, you have printed and emailed. So you really know if you sent it by email already that the system actually saves it in the database, and you're going to see it at the top of the screen. Let's see what else kind of interesting here. Yeah, the last one, enable tax calculation in down payment. This is actually a big one for us, for US, where if you do a down payment on an order or without an order, it doesn't matter, you can calculate tax where before you couldn't. So now you can calculate tax. It's going to show up in the tax reports. It's going to be deducted from the final invoice, and the whole cycle is supported now. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the system. So this is kind of the new look and feel. As you can see, version 10, you can see the name of the user and the company right here at the top. I can go ahead and open the web client directly from here if I wanted to, and the web client, again, is just a URL that opens the alternative client for Business One. So I'm not gonna touch that now. You can, if you notice this toolbar here at the top, you can show or hide the toolbar. So if you wanted more space in the screen, or this toolbar is kind of, you're not using it, so you can definitely get rid of it. Let's take a look at license administration. And here I can hide locked users, which again, when I get long lists here, it gets significant. I can filter and I can sort the table, which again, I couldn't do before. It was kind of static here. I couldn't really do much here. All right, so this is the users. Let's go ahead. Oh, and I did talk about it during the slide where when I create a user that I removed in the past, so the system will ask me, do I want to save it or not? So it just opens that option for me. In the general settings, on the BP, these are all the checkboxes that are relevant for approval procedure, and the one that we just added was the last one, to allow authorizers to take a document in a pending status and update it, where before the authorizer could only update it after it's approved or generated. So now if I'm the authorizer and I want to make a quick change to the document before I approve it, I can now do it if the box is checked. Let's look at alerts. So you notice it's kind of different from what we're used to. If I'm going to show all the alerts, I can see, you know, everything here. I can apply multiple actions on it. For example, I want to set it to active, so all three, or I want to create a new alert. And then it's kind of the same window that I know from before. Let's look at authorizations, general authorizations. If I look at which one? Yeah, this one is not a super user. So if I look at business partners and business partner master data, you can see the tab level authorizations. Okay, so you can do read only or no authorization on the tab level. Another nice little enhancement is the find next. So if you're looking for anything that's got to do with order, so it will show me the first one, and then I can go ahead and find next, anything that includes the word order in it. So again, much easier to find what you're looking for. Now let's take a quick look at creating a new invoice. Not much has changed, but I'm going to select MaxiTech here. So first of all, if I look at the addresses under logistics, I can now see user-defined fields. Those are 2 user-defined fields in the address. So I can definitely, you know, update it if I need it on the invoice level. On the accounting tab, you will find the QR code. So you can enter it here, and later, of course, in the printout, you can print the QR code. Now I'm going to select a couple of items, and if I look at the bottom here, this is where, before I do that, this is where I can pick and choose. Do I want to add new or add and new, add and view, add and close? Let's do add and view. And now the invoice is added, okay, but I'm staying in the invoice window that I just created. Now, if you notice, I do have a user-defined field here, but it's blocked. I cannot do anything. I cannot change it. In the document settings, on the per document, if I go to AR invoice, I can allow update of UDFs in the row level, okay? So now let's see if I need to refresh, or it's, yeah, I don't need to refresh. So now it's available for me for editing. Okay. A few more slides. Let me see on time. Okay, I think we're good. Project management. If you guys, I think is it today or tomorrow? I'm not sure. You had a session that explains project management, and one of the features there, it's the interactive Gantt chart, and it really does give you a holistic view of your project with all the steps, the dependencies between steps, and now you can actually move steps around from the Gantt chart, and it's going to update the start and due date and finish date in the actual project. So it's not just a nice chart. You can actually move things around and impact the data in the project. Inventory and distribution on the serial and batch management is now supported by AR reserve invoice and invoice and inventory transfer requests, which is kind of like a sales order, right? Because it doesn't actually move the inventory out or in, but it can commit the serial number in those documents as well. They've added a couple of columns here in the report, and also there is new reports available called forward batches and serial trace report and backward or reverse. So this is for especially for production. If you, for example, you get, the customer calls and said, I have the serial number, and you want to trace it back to which parent it came from, what's the history of that serial number from production. So this is a really nice report that you can just plug in your serial number or batch number, and it's going to show you the history of your serial numbers. Units of measures in item master now can be changed. If you remember, usually once you put in the unit of measure, you're stuck with it forever. So now you can actually choose a different unit of measure. There are some caveats there. One is that you need to kind of zero down everything. So you want to make sure no documents are open. And also the new unit of measure must have at least identical set of conversions that the original had. So what's the logic here is that if you wanted to add more conversions, you could, but you still need to have the base unit the same. So, I mean, you can change it, but you can't change it to something completely different. There has to be kind of, the base has to be the same. On the production bill of material, you can, if you update the description of the item master, it's going to ask you, do you want to update the description of the bill of material that is linked? In addition, you can change the description of the items in the bill of material itself, where if you want to call it something different, if you want to add more information when it comes to the production. So it allows you to do that without influencing the item master. That's a nice functionality where you can delete multiple bill of materials at the same time through the bill of material management window. So that's something that we've been asked a lot. When you drill down from the document, let's say you have an item and you click on the drill down and it's a bill of material, before it would always open the bill of material, but now you have a checkbox that says open the item master and not the bill of material. So I know it was kind of annoying that I didn't want to look at the bill of material. I wanted to look at the item. So it saves me a few clicks in this example. So for the final part, platform and extensibility. So I did mention web client on SQL, and that's as a result that the service layer is now enabled to work with SQL. And this is relevant, especially for your partner and any third-party solutions that in the past may have not been able to work with the HANA version or that used the kind of old technology of the DI API, and now they want to move to the new technology, which is the service layer, but you're using SQL, so now you have the ability to do that. This is a really big one. Formatted search supports multiple triggers. So you know how you could always say, trigger the formatted search, or we call it actually user-defined values based on a field. Now you can choose up to 5 different triggers. So if you have some kind of calculation that's based on more than one column, now you can be sure that the calculation is always going to be accurate, because it's going to trigger multiple times based on your changes. Office 365 integration, you can configure in the general settings the path that you're using OneDrive and Office 365. And this means that everything is uploaded whenever you have an attachment, or you send an email, or you export to Word on Excel. It's going to open in 365, and it's going to be saved in your cloud. Out of this, I want to point out the HANA 2.0, which is a new, basically HANA platform. Before, we were only supporting HANA 1.0. And this brings a lot of new capabilities in terms of development, in terms of performance. So this is really good news for us that we're supporting HANA 2.0. Oh, done. So this was, I know it's a lot of information, and just to summarize, you probably noticed there's not like huge new modules in version 10, but a lot of different small kind of enhancements, a checkbox, a new window, a new field. It just kind of makes your life easier. And I think that's as valuable, as any new feature, because I think we're at a point where that's what we need. We kind of got it covered in terms of, the major features. So now we're just fine tuning the version. So I hope you liked it, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and give it back to Richard.
Thank you, Idit. And yes, Richard, if you're ready, then the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Idit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the steps toward a successful migration. Now, I know there's some questions in the chat already about when are these features available, when can I get them? And I'm sure everybody wants to upgrade to version 10 and get all of this stuff in their own environment. Before we do that, we have to take some things into consideration. So the first thing to take into consideration is the deployment scenario. So some of you have servers that you purchased and you're hosting it in-house. So you have an IT team, or you just have a server in-house where we've already installed Business One and HANA for you. But some of you have contracted IT services externally. For example, you might have your environment that you purchase, but you have it at a data center. So that's called a hosted environment. You can see the three common ones here. There's obviously more than that, but these are the most common ones that we run into. So on-premise is you purchased, you run it yourself. Hosted is you have a company running it for you somewhere. And then the third one is a cloud deployment. So the shared multi-tenant cloud deployment, where it's not just your data, there's a bunch of customers sharing physical resources, or there's a service provider in between that does that for you. They allocate some space for you to run your Business One environment over there. Once we've identified which deployment method you have, which we know because we are implementing you guys, we can talk about the upgrade process itself. Most of this is exactly the same for on-premise or shared in the cloud. The only thing that changes is that for in the cloud, you, the customer, only get involved at the end user validation stage. Everything before that is handled by the company that is doing the hosting for you. So this is the basic chart here. We'll go into more detail in the next slides of these steps here. So the first thing we got to do is check the target version that we're going to. So what do we have to do for that? Well, we have to figure out which target version you want to go to. And typically we do that by either checking what new features you want and when they're available, or if you're running into a problem today that is recurrent and has been identified by SAP as a bug and they've already patched it in some version, then we go to that version. We don't simply, just upgrade for upgrade's sake. We typically upgrade when there's something that is needed, like a new feature or to fix a problem. But we do have some limiting factors there, which are, well, does the new version that we're going to support any add-ons that we're running? So if you have customizations or external solutions that you purchase from other vendors or ourselves, it's possible that those kind of lock you into a specific version. So this is all part of the process where we initially do a bunch of planning before we start working to make sure that we choose the right target version to go to. And sometimes this is very rare, but in 10% of the circumstances, sometimes it requires multiple updates. So that's the last point here, intermediate updates. From some versions that you come from, you can't just go directly to the last version. We have to do more than one upgrade. That means more time in the testing process and more time in the upgrade process. Okay, so when we're reviewing which patch level we're going to go to, there is something that SAP provides for us called the overview note. And every single version of SAP Business One has an overview note dedicated to it, which will tell us what the supported upgrade path is. So it'll tell us if we have to do one or more migrations, and it'll also tell us what the supported operating system and database versions are. So if, for example, you are locked in to a specific operating system version, your IT company will not upgrade it for you, or you just don't have the licenses. We're talking about Microsoft side here. To upgrade to a new version, it's possible you may not be able to go to Business One on a new version. So we review this chart with you, we'll give you the options, and then we make that decision together. This is kind of what that note looks like. For example, this is version 10, patch level 3, which is now called Feature Pack 2008 for the year and the month. And you'll see here that there's some highlighted information here regarding what this version supports. So a particular version of the SUSE operating system for the HANA systems, and it's a particular version of the HANA application itself. And it tells us what we can upgrade from on the bottom here. On the right-hand side, you can see I've only displayed 20 entries out of these 252, but every single patch that comes out fixes a bunch of issues and adds a bunch of features sometimes. So there's a whole chart here that we use to determine which one we're going to put you on in the end. And if you guys need access to these, we can share these with you. They're available for the customer. So if you ask for those, we'll send them your way. But this is kind of where we start to look at what version we're going to put you on. Okay, next, and super important, and this is very specific to the customer itself, is your customizations, right? Because if we have a system that is just a standalone Business One installation out of the box and you just implemented the Business One modules, it's typically just a process of running the upgrade tool and we're fine. But if you have customizations, you have integrations with EDI, with your warehouse, you have external add-ons, e-commerce, all of those things, then it complicates the migration process significantly. So when we do have those, it is, I would say, almost mandatory that we implement this process step by step, because if we don't do those tests, we're going to run into the problems already when you're live, and it's going to cause downtime for you, and it's going to cost everybody time and money. So that's what we want to avoid by executing these plans as we build them. So if you have customizations, we create a plan, we get in touch with all the vendors that provided those customizations. It could be ourselves or add-ons from other partners. And with that information, we ask them what they support, what new version they support. We build that plan, and then we do those tests. So once we've identified the customizations and we've identified what version you can go to, the actual process of the test migration happens. So there should always be a test migration first, where you can validate everything, and then a productive migration sometime after that. So here's the process. We'd like to have a clone of the current environment. So this is facilitated when you have a virtual environment, right? So if you're running on VMware or Hyper-V or Amazon or one of the cloud providers, it's much easier because it's just a cloning process where everything is exactly the same, but in a sandbox. So we can do the upgrade there, identify any technical issues, right? Something that just crashes or stops the upgrade in place. Let's say that all goes well. Then we need you, the end users, all the users in your company that have a distinct task, let's call it, to replicate those processes, those daily processes in the test environment. So if you print something out, if you send an email, if you run a particular customization, you should test that in the test environment before we sign off and schedule the productive migration. So we should have a checklist of these are the things you do. So that's a checklist that you internally, so the user processes themselves, it's not possible for consensus to know what each individual user does every day. So that's something that we ask you, the customer, whoever is the lead of the project on the customer side, to get those checklists going. So we'll have a general checklist for the migration, but there should be internal checklists as well for these processes need to be validated on the new version before we move. We would catalog any upgrade issues. So those could be technical or functional. And then we'd come up with a plan to implement those fixes. And what that allows us to do is that once we have everything written down and we have fixes in place, we might have had to reach out to other vendors or to SAP for those specific issues. We could then schedule the productive migration. And the day that we do the productive migration, we can implement those fixes immediately instead of finding out 3-5 days after that there's a problem and then scrambling to try to fix it. All right, so the productive migration can be scheduled, like I said, after all the changes are validated. We'll back up the productive environment. We'll execute a new migration on that new copy, which has your latest data. So your company's up to date. And then once that migration is done, you'll go in and you'll do a quick validation of business critical processes. So make sure you can add a sample sales order, like in a test company, on the now productive environment. Make sure you can cancel a document, make sure you can email, those kind of things. And of course, whenever we do a migration, there's a period after that where we're in, let's say, migration support mode. So whoever does the migration on our side is kind of dedicated to you at that point to make sure that right after a migration, that week after, you have quicker access to support and we can fix any major issue right away. Looks like that's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, please throw them up in the Q&A and we'll get them taken care of.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen briefly. Thank you for that presentation. Am I sharing my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. So before we get to a couple of questions that I see are coming in, I wanted to remind everyone about our sessions tomorrow. The links were shared in our chat. If you haven't registered to any of these sessions, this is a good time to do so. And let's get to our questions. Okay, so we have a question here for Richard, and the question is, how long does the testing cycle last?
That's very specific to the actual customer. Typically, if it's like a vanilla implementation of SAP, under a week, we do the clone, we get it upgraded. The part that takes the longest is actually the end customer doing validations themselves and scheduling the productive migration. If there's a bunch of customizations or external tools that need to be testing, we really have to depend on all of the vendors involved to be able to schedule their time and to be able to perform the test migration. And all of those things, those will all be factors.
Okay, thank you very much. We had a question in the chat that was already answered. When are these features available, the features that Idit was presenting? And the question was answered, this version 10 is already available. So we have another question of what do I need to do to upgrade to version 10? I think that would be contacting us, correct, Richard?
Yes, so whoever is trying to upgrade to version 10, all you need to do is make sure that you send in a support request. So you send an email to support@consensusintl.com, say, hey, I'm looking to upgrade to this version, and you can help us out by providing details. It could be because I want this feature, or because I haven't had an upgrade in a long time and my version's not in support anymore, or I have a problem that is fixed in one of the new versions.
Okay.
And just to add a note, Clara, is
Sure.
that for the customers, that version 10 was actually released, I think it was October last year. We had about a 6 months ramp up period. Mm-hmm. So it's been through a lot. So we started with, the patch 0, the original, and we had a patch 1, a patch 2. And now we are in the feature pack 2008, which is patch 3. So, I mean, if you're worried that it's new, so it's not that new anymore. Yeah, I'm not saying you're past due. No, I mean, this is now the time to upgrade. But, before we get out a version out there, we do a lot of pre-release testing and ramp up. And things like that. So it's been generally available for a few months now.
Thank you, Idit. Thank you so much. We have a last question. A customer is asking, I have upgraded in the past without the testing. Do I need to do the testing now?
So yeah, in the past we might have done some upgrades without testing. That typically we do that when we have implementations that are a little bit more vanilla. But over the years, we're coming to standardize the process a lot more. So that means more protection for you and more protection for us. So we need to be able to document everything, know exactly what it is we're going to be upgrading. And for that, we do it in test environments now because that allows us the flexibility to not have to work under pressure while, the business may be stopped and we're trying to fix an issue. So that way we can identify anything beforehand.
Okay. Thank you, Richard, very much. I don't see that we have any other questions. Let me check in the chat. Sometimes the questions come through the chat. No, we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much, Idit and Richard. If you have nothing more today, then I think we can call it a day. And I hope I'll see you all tomorrow. Remember to send us your feedback through the survey that is going to come up in your screen as soon as I stop this session, and you will be entered in the raffle for an iPad Air. We thank you very much for your time, and I hope I'll see you tomorrow.